that, there had been tests on other stations around the world showing heavy metals and things like that. And then, as I mentioned, a number of organizations before us have tested whale and dolphin meat in Japan, looking at the issue of contamination. And it's not just mercury, by the way. Mercury is the main problem because the most dangerous poison we know next to plutonium. But there's also PCBs, which are very highly pollutants and cause a great deal of damage to human systems as well as animal systems. The mercury itself. We've also been doing a few tests on radiation in recent months and years because of the damage to the Fukushima nuclear power plant. Fukushima, you may know, during the tsunami that hit Japan, was very badly damaged, and because of that, a great deal of radiation, both cesium and iodine, radioactive iodine, have been dumped into the ocean. That's far north of Taiji, but certainly well within the range of the dolphins that Taiji is killing. So we've been looking at that issue. So far, we haven't found any radiation in dolphins, but we've only tested a few, and we'd like to do some more of that this coming year. We've seen some radiation showing up in minke whales, which have been killed off the north coast of Japan as part of their, quote, scientific research, which is a sort of bogus way for them to keep their whaling industry alive in Japan. So we've been working on this, and so we've done a number of tests, working with Japanese activists actually who've gone to Taiji, have bought the meat. It's very hard for a Westerner to go to Taiji and buy whale meat, or dolphin meat. They won't sell it to you, basically. So we get Japanese activists in there and buying it, and then they take it to labs in Japan itself. So this isn't us saying that it's mercury contamination. It's Japanese labs that have looked at this. And there's also been some scientists in Japan who have done this testing before. You saw some of them in the movie.
There's a question over there. Someone tried to ask. I'm going to expand on it, Leonida. Because the meat was being kind of distributed through the school, according to the documentary, the dolphin meat.
Right.
Were there any cases that came out about children suffering the effects of mercury poisoning as a result of that, or was there any sort of transparency in the reporting of that?
No, that's again one of the problems. I think I mentioned that the Japanese government did come down and test citizens of Taiji, mostly older people, because the mercury accumulates as you age, and there's more dolphin meat being eaten by the older people. And they did find large amounts of mercury, but then, kind of shrugged it off and said, well, there's no problem. If you saw the Cove movie, there's a sequence in it where Louis Sahoyos, the director, is talking with this guy from the Japanese Fisheries Agency towards the end. And at the end, it shows that they took hair samples from him to test for mercury, and that they did show that he was positive. His hair samples were positive for having mercury in them. And we told him that, and he came back and said, well, this just shows that I have a very healthy fish diet, and that's why I got high levels of mercury. Isn't that great? So they are in a bit of denial over the mercury issue, and as far as we know, we don't have any evidence of problems with mercury, but then that kind of thing would be hushed up by the government if it did occur, or denied by the government. There's still debate within the government over the terrible problems which were documented in the Cove movie. Years ago, the problems in Minamata, Japan, where they had a number of very, very severe poisoning cases, thousands of people poisoned from eating fish because the mercury was being dumped right into the ocean there in the bay where people were fishing in Minamata. And the government's still fighting over that, whether it was the mercury or whether it was something else that caused the problems that people are having, which are clear cases of mercury poisoning. So there's a lot of denial, and it's very much an uphill battle to get the government to admit that there's any problem.
Have you ever been arrested for time saved dolphins?
I have not, no. Rick's been arrested quite a few times. One of the problems we have in Japan is that if we were to do something that, such as go out and cut the nets, or somehow interfere with the fishermen, go out and yell at them or something on the ocean, we would be arrested, and we'd probably be deported, and then we wouldn't be allowed back into the country. And there's a number of bad consequences from that. One is that obviously we'd soon run out of people to go to Japan, and wouldn't have any kind of insight into what's going on in Taiji, wouldn't be able to report on what's going on, wouldn't be able to work there locally. And I mentioned one of our major efforts has been to work locally with Japanese activists. There are a number of groups in Japan that are active against the dolphin hunts and have been for a number of years. But they have told us if we were to be arrested, that's a big stigma in Japan. If you are arrested, you're assumed to be liable. You're assumed to be guilty. That's not the case in this country, but in Japan, if you're arrested, that's a black mark against you. And our people who we work with in Japan have told us that if we were ever arrested and thrown out of the country, they couldn't work with us anymore. And to us, it's very, very important to maintain those relations with the Japanese activists and support the Japanese activists. They're going to be very key, I think, in ending the dolphin hunts there. So that's one of the reasons why we haven't gone out of our way to get arrested. It's pretty easy, actually, to get arrested in Taiji because there are 50 to 100 police there during the dolphin hunts. They have a huge Coast Guard vessel stationed out in the ocean outside to intercept anybody who is foolish enough to try to go out by boat. Even assuming you can get a boat in Japan, it's very hard to even rent a boat in Japan, much less go out on the ocean in Taiji, where the local people know, of course, that that's a no-no during the dolphin hunts.
We only have a couple of minutes left. One more question, then I was going to maybe.
Hello. In your opinion, other than raising awareness, is there any other way to stop this massacre peacefully?
So, is there any other way to stop this massacre peacefully?
Well, that's what we're looking for. It's sort of a spaghetti on the wall situation where we have a variety of tools we use, such as media, going to the newspapers and going to the radio and television, telling them about the stories, or going to a lawsuit and filing lawsuits. We actually have an existing lawsuit that we filed, the first one, was filed by us and by a group called Australia for Dolphins, based in Australia, and that case revolves around the Taiji Whale Museum. They were refusing to allow Westerners to come into the Taiji Whale Museum, saying that we won't allow any anti-whalers into our museum, but they were allowing Japanese people to go into their museum. So that was discrimination, and the case is now before the courts. And interestingly enough, ever since we filed the case, the Taiji Whale Museum has relented and now allows people to go into the Taiji Whale Museum, so we don't have to don disguises like Rick did. Rick has a very elaborate disguise. He managed to get into the Taiji Whale Museum before we filed the lawsuit. But there's a variety of different techniques one can use, and we're just trying them out, trying to figure out what's the best one to use. As I mentioned, just educating the local people about the dangers of mercury contamination has, we believe, led to a substantial decrease in the number of dolphins being killed. We're putting pressure on the captivity industry as best we can, and we're looking at various different options there, but I think long term, it's educating the people of Japan and getting the people of Japan, the activists, to stand up, which is very hard to do in Japan. You can get into a lot of trouble if you're a Japanese and you go against the government. They're not nice people with the government there, unfortunately. You can have your job, for example, can be jeopardized if you speak out against the hunts and taiji or some of the other activities by the government. So it's a tough place to work. But we're optimistic in the sense that we've got a lot of support, a lot of great people like those of you students who can help out, and we urge you to go to our website, dolphinproject.org, and SaveJapanDolphins.org, and look at those websites and see what you can do. There's action pages where people can take action. We have blogs explaining the latest details of what's going on for whales and dolphins around the world, not just taiji. So there's a lot of things you can do as students. You can contact your representatives in Congress and urge them to put some pressure on the Obama administration, who can talk to the Japanese government to government, and say this is unacceptable and we need to stop this.
Well, Mark, we thank you so much for being patient with us. And, you know, you feed their project so much better for having given them the time as a primary source interview. So invaluable educational experience for our students. So thank you again. Thank you so much.
Great. If you have any other questions, you've got my email address, so feel free to contact me.
I will.
Yay, thank you.